Welcome back to our read on contemporary society and the primary institutions of the arts, music, and communications. This is video 6F Part 10, which continues our focus on the communication platforms embedded in the mega media corporations. In this part, we will continue examining the state of our communications, focusing on how TV, cable, and media news has taken sides in our nation's politics. We will discuss their heavy bias and its consequent impacts to our national freedoms. Moving away from the lack of standards in moral sexual behavior for a moment, let's take another look at an issue in today's liberal mainstream media: bias. A bias which reveals a deep pattern of moral relativity, particularly when it comes to a lack of honesty and truthfulness to the public. We are referring to the mainstream deliberately taking sides in national and regional politics, slanting stories to one side, usually in a biased, most favorable light, while oftentimes painting the other side with excessive negativity and fake news. Clearly, we see a definitive intent to influence the public through manipulation and misdirection. A case in point, in 2016, the nation was engaged in a presidential election in the midst of an ideologically and morally divided nation. And the 2016 presidential election cycle was indeed combative, triggering new lows in presidential politics and polarizing the nation like never before. And clearly, the 2016 election cycle revealed a lot of truly toxic behaviors in our political system. The use of smear merchants by the Hillary campaign, David Brock and GPS Fusion in particular, the Russian collusion fake news, spurred on by biased media, the gotcha moment on Donald Trump and Billy Bush in the bus, the email scandal with Hillary, the denials and classified info exposure, the Clinton Foundation, DOJ collusion, FBI collusion, DNC collusion, Trump's tweets and nastiness. The list is nearly endless. Everything got tossed, and at everyone. Here's how three of the major mainstream news networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, covered the presidential aspirants on one night of reporting, reflecting a heavy bias in how they represented the news. Two things are measured on the chart. One, negative reporting on Donald Trump, highlighted in red, and two, critical reporting of Hillary Clinton, highlighted in yellow, reflecting coverage of the WikiLeaks or Clinton's campaign email, each of which clearly indicated some type of corruption, collusion, or smearing of Trump. Several minutes to pummel Trump, and either no or only a few seconds devoted to revealing dishonest Clinton tactics. This is a great example of the bias in the left mainstream news media, outrightly ignoring news, not supporting their ideological position. In May of 2017, Harvard University's Shorenstein Center on Media published a study on the media coverage of Donald Trump during the 2016 presidential election, summarized here by Rick Morin of The American Thinker. The Harvard study strongly indicated an extraordinary bias against Trump in the 2016 presidential race, as found in both print and newscasts of American mainstream media. Based on analysis of news reports in printed editions of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, and the main newscast of CBS, CNN, Fox News, and NBC, and three European news outlets. As you can see, the tone of news coverage when statements were made about Trump's fitness for office were clearly negative towards Trump. At the Washington Post, 96% negative to 4% positive. At the New York Times, 87% negative versus 13% positive. CNN, 82% negative, and NBC, 80% negative. And when Harvard measured the percentage of news reports with negative or positive tone, here's what they found: a clear liberal bias at every mainstream electronic and print media studied, with the exception of Fox News, who clearly earned the reputation for balanced and fair reporting. And when Harvard measured the tone coverage for major issues, policy positions, or background, we see an astonishing negative bias against Trump on 12 out of the 12 major issues facing the nation. Again, this is the mainstream media, which wants us to believe they are objective, honest, and fair. The facts say otherwise. Clearly, they are heavily biased in coverage, tone, and commentary. We cannot be at all surprised by Gallup's poll results in 2016, where it was shown the Americans' trust in mass media has sunk to a new low. Only 32% of Americans say they have a great deal or a fair amount of trust. Republicans, only 14%, indicated trust, down from the prior year, and confidence dropped among both younger and older Americans. The polling results show a consistent decline in how Americans trust mass media. In 1997, more than half of Americans trusted the news, and since then the trust rating has plummeted to only 32% nowadays. This chart tells us something is drastically wrong in American communications. If 68% of the nation doesn't trust what they're hearing and seeing in our mass media. Gallup also shows a concerning trend in their polling when age is considered in the results. The 18 to 49-year-olds shown in red have a collapsing trust in mass media, versus the 50-year-olds and older shown in green. The younger population is down to just 26% trusting the news. This type of trend does not bode well for the nation, when the current and last generation is increasingly distrustful of what information they're getting from the news, especially regarding social, national, and political issues. Society and civil order starts to weaken, leading to conflict, polarization, and eventually anarchy. Unfortunately, we are starting to see this structural decay in our culture, forming and manifesting itself with increasing frequency. When the current and most recent generations in our country indicate they are increasingly distrustful of what information they are getting from the news media, especially regarding social, national, and political issues that are formative to our selection of political leaders, policies, laws, and execution of such in our society, we ought to be concerned and worried. Such distrust leads to instability across the culture, to polarization and deepening divisions, and world history has shown us many examples over time and continents. For when the body politic becomes so divided and it cannot reconcile positions through civil discourse and representative government, then civil order invariably weakens, eventually destabilizes, leading to conflict and inevitably to anarchy or civil war. Unfortunately, we are starting to see the structural decay in our culture picking up momentum, with groups like Antifa causing near riots, the left liberal efforts to shut down free speech on college campuses, the false protest movements which has led to riots, all the above inflamed by biased liberal mainstream media. Earlier, we spoke some about the importance of critical thinking, particularly when it comes to evaluating issues and concerns we have in our lives, both private and public, issues regarding communities, our government, our elected officials, and our nation's priorities. We would emphasize it's through critical thinking and related analysis we come to form our opinions and positions on subjects or issues we face. The better we think through something, the better our opinions are formed. In turn, those opinions form the basis for our judgment and choices, in affirming up our decisions to go this way or that, in standing for something or standing against it, in guiding our decisions on political choices, laws, peoples, and circumstances in our lives. Getting to good choices and subsequent actions always is a function of how robust and complete we think things through, considering all the relevant information and facts we can obtain or are provided with. Completeness requires you have a free flow and unobstructed access to the source of facts, pros and cons on any subject we may be pondering, facts, information, and perspective, not filtered by others, not incomplete because someone omitted information, and not slanted due to intentional bias, but as genuine and as complete as the subject can be represented, so the reader or listener can critically think about the subject at hand. Incompleteness requires us to weigh those facts in our consideration of the issue, weighing them against our personal standards for determining truth and correctness, and weighing them within the social or personal context we're in, as we form our final decision and contemplate our subsequent actions. It all works very well when a few essential conditions are met regarding those facts and information we ultimately consider in our personal thinking. First, the facts are accurate without omission or slant. Second, the facts are complete and honestly presented, lacking bias. And third, the facts are conveyed to us in a timely manner. If any of these conditions are not consistently met, the choices and decisions we eventually reach will likely be faulty and incomplete, or worse, just plain wrong. Where do you think the majority of the American public gets its facts and information from, on the subjects and issues we face, on things we should have an informed opinion about in the normal course of our lives, like education, the economy and taxes, immigration and social issues, science and environment, military and defense, health and welfare, and political candidates? In today's modern society, our source of information for facts, data, analysis, and opinion come at us from many different directions and at varying times. Family and friends, reading, school, associations, places of worship, our workplaces, or just other people, by word of mouth. However, increasingly today and more than ever, the majority of people source their information, facts, data, analysis, opinion, and otherwise principally from one general source: the news, be it local, regional, or national. Most information people obtain and rely upon is from the news. This is where we go to get information on what's going on regarding our interests in life, be it sports, politics, lifestyle, business, or whatever. We go to our TV, the radio, our smartphones, or our home computers. We go to national and local media to get informed, mostly on TV or cable networks, on morning or nightly newscasts, sometimes on Sunday talk shows. Some of us even still read it in newspapers and magazines. And through the local and national media's information, analysis, and commentary, most Americans shape their opinions on the issues they face in their everyday lives. And our opinions in turn harden into positions we hold to, and those positions frame the decisions we make and actions we take. Actions which will forge the quality of our lives, our communities, and our nation. And given this mental process our minds follow, a very lot, counts on the accuracy and truthfulness of the media we listen to. Some people ask, why do you think that this is so important? We offer a simple and direct response. It's important to the overall quality of decisions we make over time and the actions we subsequently take as a free people, thereby ensuring the freedom we enjoy, ensuring we will remain a republic and an elected democracy, ensuring we will remain a nation of laws, and ensuring our children and their children will be so protected from the loss of their freedoms to think, speak, and act openly. So why is it so important? Well, to put it succinctly, it's precisely about our freedom of expression in ideas, writing, speech, and most importantly, in choosing our elected leaders, or you could say the vote. All of these constitutional rights are in fact heavily contingent upon a free and truthful media, a media that's honest and forthcoming to the public. And if the media is not, instead choosing to be biased and slanted, then our ability to make good judgment and public expressions are severely impaired. And by consequence, our constitutional freedoms are indeed jeopardized, if not entirely lost. We would like to emphasize one very important truth. There is a symbiotic relationship between the American public's rights to free speech, free thinking, and the pursuit of happiness, and, just as importantly, a free and open press, whether that press is a TV network, radio, a newspaper, magazine, or digital internet. By a symbiotic relationship, we simply mean one does not properly happen without the other. Together, mutual freedom is achieved between people and institutions, and if one side is out of balance, the entire relationship of mutuality is diminished, if not altogether lost. with a heavy cost to our society and surrounding culture. In this symbiotic relationship between the public and America's press, each side relies upon the other. The bee seeks good nectar to build its life, and, provided the flower produces, all is well. And so it is between the American public and the major media news and information houses. A mutuality and a symbiosis is necessary for both sides to achieve a healthy balance and life of freedom. To interact with common purpose and mutual benefit in order to achieve more freedom for both than otherwise would be possible. However, as we have hopefully shown you, what kills the symbiotic relationship is a biased and dishonest media, stemming from ideological division, polarization, and deception. Energized not by fundamental moral principle, but relative morality, where honesty and truth are pushed aside, and a fervor to manipulate and deceive as means justifying an end, where people can't get the truth and consequently are misled into bad choice, weak decisions, and their lives are diminished, as they are cheated out of their freedoms. There are, throughout the history of humanity, those exceptional moments in time when something unique happens, an event, a work of art, a collapse of a civilization, the birth of a new one. Sometimes it's a simple moment of insight, shared by a humble messenger at the right and necessary time, yet with the conviction and power of an underlining wisdom imparted by a loving God. Many in the world will listen, and by doing so will learn and grow. Others will be deaf and indifferent to what's said, blocked by their deep personal vanity and preferred isolation from God, and they shall not learn. Nonetheless, the message is shared and resounds across the cultures, as warning, as healing, as wisdom breathed into humanity, a unique wisdom for a special moment in our time. In mid-December of 2017, we had one of those exceptional moments in history. It occurred in Europe, in Italy to be precise, in Vatican City, a center of religion and faith, home of the Catholic Church and the leadership of a great following around the world. In December, Francis reflected as he often does, and then shared an insight he felt compelled to speak about. It was about something he saw occurring in the heart of our culture, at this time in our modern history, something of importance for us to hear, and more importantly, to comprehend. It is often said that when a person of pure heart speaks, their words most often carry a moral message, intended for our minds and hearts, intended for our betterment, and we should therefore listen most carefully. Pope Francis speaks out about an issue he sees enveloping the world today, and as he observes, it's an issue of moral corruption and deception, so he courageously steps forward onto the world stage to confront what he has discerned is an evil amongst us, a penetrating attack against the fabric of our culture, of human trust and honesty. Pope Francis speaks about how the media sins by dredging up and sensationalizing old news. His comments criticize journalists who are engaged in deceit through willful intent and focus in their choices and actions. Pope Francis speaks out to those journalists and news organizations to consider and confront what they are doing, making it clear to the world it's a very serious sin that hurts all involved, especially the trusting and innocent among us. In December, Francis was planning to dedicate his upcoming annual communication message to fake news, telling Catholic media that journalists perform a mission that is among the most fundamental to democratic societies across the entire world. He reminded the journalists and the media organizations they are part of to provide precise, complete, and correct information, and not to provide one-sided reports, which allows bias and manipulation to occur. The Pope said you shouldn't fall into the sins of communication, disinformation, or just giving one side, an affront to the integrity of truthful communication. Or calumny that is sensationalized, or defamation, looking for things that are old news and have already been dealt with, and bringing them to light today. A message for humanity from a simple man, humble before God, yet devotional to all people everywhere, especially when it comes to telling us the truth. When we bring all the issues together regarding the media, the ideological division leading to polarization, leading to institutional bias, and the consequent corruption of our mainstream media, recognize it all stems from a deliberate dishonesty and an intent to deceive and manipulate. When we consider all this and the damage it causes to our culture, to our lives and society, we should recognize that a house built on mistruths will not stand. Put it all together, it leads us into cultural decay, denying us a freedom to think critically, denying us a freedom to express and speak freely, denying us a freedom to choose openly our political leaders, policies, and law. And further, it all leads us to the house relative morality built, and we really think you don't want to live there. This completes video 6F Part 10. We encourage you to go on to 6F Part 11, where we will continue our review focusing on TV, cable, and the Internet.